Watch right now on the Front News Project. Moscow has been shaken, drones are striking military targets, and Flamingo missiles are already prepared for attack. Crimea, missile systems have been destroyed, and in southern Russia, the port of Tuapse is on fire. And also, Russian fighter jets near Alaska. Trump has scrambled the Air Force. What happens next? Fiery, intense, and blazing footage from the front lines. Watch it right now. Greetings, this is Vladimir Timoshenko with you, and we're starting right away with the main story. Moscow is under drone attack, airports are being shut down, a Russian plane nearly grazes the rooftops, and Muscovites' cars are burning. But you know, this is just the overture to the real attacks on the enemy capital. We'll tell you when Flamingos will fly from Ukraine to military targets in Moscow. Which drones and missiles will accompany them? Which sites in the Russian capital are legitimate targets for Ukrainian weaponry? And how prepared is Russian air defense to repel such attacks? Let's watch.
Moscow and the Moscow region were subjected to another massive attack by Ukrainian drones. The first drones entered the area around 8 p.m. on September 21st. The sky over Moscow was closed to civilian aviation. Civilian planes were forced to fly directly over the skyscrapers of the Russian capital. Dozens of flights were cancelled, and the air raid alert in Moscow and other regions lasted for several hours.
From midnight to 7 a.m. Moscow time, air defense forces on duty destroyed 69 Ukrainian drones and aircraft over the territories of Belgorod, Bryansk, Kaluga, and Kursk regions. The Moscow region, as well as the Rostov, Ryazan, Samara, Saratov regions, and the Republic of Crimea.
This is not the first attack on the White Stone City. Back in the spring of this year, Russian experts claimed that Moscow's air defense was impossible to breach.
The Moscow region has a deeply layered air defense system. It is one of the most protected megacities in the world. We produce various short-range systems, such as the Panzer Air Defense System and the Torem 2. These are precisely the systems that intercept Ukrainian fixed-wing drones. The leadership of the Russian Federation, even the president, are still dependent on what happens inside Russia. And when open discontent begins, when discussions start to take place, their pompous statements will gradually be undermined.
And despite the maximum level of protection claimed by authorities and experts, it seems Putin still cannot fully protect the capital from Ukrainian drones, which are attacking Russia's main city more and more frequently. Even before the May 9th parade, air defense systems from all over Russia were brought to Moscow. But this did not yield significant results. Russia has formed a new air defense ring around Moscow, using old Soviet bases to quickly strengthen protection against drones and missiles. These air defense positions were deployed at the site of the former small defense ring, which was created back in the 1960s and 70s. At that time, these systems were designed to counter nuclear missile strikes. But they are not adapted to the latest means of attack.
They were tailored for ballistic and tactical missiles. But today, this is a different model of warfare. Now, these are strike drones of various types, which accordingly also change their direction of movement. They are designed to strike from above as well, and literally right over buildings, which makes them difficult for air defense systems to detect.
Currently, when it comes to Moscow's air defense, the Kremlin is not using new ideas, but rather Soviet-era solutions. On Soviet-era towers, most likely radars are installed and possibly anti-drone nets are being stretched. But these solutions apparently are not very effective. Putin understands that sooner or later Moscow will become a priority target for us.
Such actions must continue. These are not missiles yet. We do not produce enough missiles to be able to launch them. But I am sure that soon missiles will also fly toward Moscow. Then the tone of negotiations, the tone of Putin's conversations and his stories about how powerful their army is, how everything is going according to plan, that they can do whatever they want and we have no choice but to surrender, the tone of these conversations will change.
The new Ukrainian-made Flamingo missiles, with a range of up to 3,000 kilometers, will already enter mass production at the beginning of 2026. Ukraine is also expecting deliveries of long-range American ERAM missiles in the near future. This will give the armed forces of Ukraine the ability to carry out combined missile and drone strikes on Moscow. And the air defense definitely won't be able to handle them. Additionally, over the past month and a half, Ukraine has significantly increased its strikes on Russia's oil refining industry. A clear example of this is the fuel shortages in some regions. Now a strike on Moscow. It's not the first and clearly not the last. Overall, such raids in the USSR strengthen Ukraine's negotiating position.
Well then, now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the much-suffering Pokrovsk direction of the front. The bloody rampage of the enemy's army continues here as well. On the Pokrovsk direction, our defenders repelled 49 enemy assaults in the areas of the settlements of Poltavka, Nikonorivka, Rodinske, Krasny Lyman, Novoekonomichne, Sukhetska, Lysivka, Zverevo, Kotlina, Udakne, and Orekhovo. Meanwhile, Crimea is becoming a new Chornobivka for the Russians. The temporarily occupied peninsula is under constant and effective attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces. Precise strikes are destroying multi-million-dollar missile systems and unique radars. Government dakas of Putin's elite and the occupiers' military headquarters are burning. About how Ukraine is liberating its Crimea. Up next.
The Russians are clearly having problems in Crimea, and the further it goes, the more surprises await the enemy.
Crimea is gradually, if we draw an analogy, being transformed by the Ukrainian Defense Forces well into something like Krimobivka, by analogy with Chornobivka, where the Russian army, Russian occupiers, and accordingly their weapons and equipment are constantly being destroyed.
Ukrainian defenders have a clear understanding of where the Russian occupiers are located in occupied Crimea and are doing everything possible to drive them out.
There is active work being done in Crimea. The process of demilitarizing Crimea is ongoing. This is an integral part of the deoccupation process.
Meanwhile, in occupied Crimea, there are increasing problems with fuel, water, and military equipment. Ukrainian strikes are destroying enemy bases, while the Russians are trying to conceal the scale of their losses. We are talking about ground, air, and naval operations that our defenders are successfully carrying out.
Today in Crimea, those significant Russian military facilities that pose a direct and undeniable threat, not only to the peninsula itself, precisely because they are strategically located there, but also directly and unequivocally threaten other sovereign territories of our country, came under a coordinated attack. This particular equipment is currently being actively used to launch devastating missile strikes on our sovereign territory. Accordingly, it is precisely what enables the Russian forces to continue their aggression, to conduct extensive reconnaissance of our airspace.
Enemy air defense facilities are being regularly eliminated, naval targets are being destroyed, and ground targets, including railways, are being struck.
The air defense system in Crimea, which is currently operating very actively and trying to repel strikes from Ukrainian defense forces, something it is not doing very well, also functions as a weapon of killing.
Problems with supplies are growing on the peninsula, and the Russians' defensive positions are collapsing.
Work is also underway on those keys that will open the door to Crimea for us. In particular, the Kinburn Spit, the Dendrovskaya Spit, and in fact, the territory of Crimea itself.
Almost every week, the destruction of Russian helicopters or air defense elements is recorded. This creates an atmosphere of fear among the occupiers and forces them to conserve resources. Ukrainian drones have even reached government dachas. On the night of September 22nd, explosions thundered in the Foros area. Russian collaborators reported that drones struck the territory of the Foros sanatorium. It was reported that 3 people were killed and 16 wounded.
It is quite likely that this resort was actually the meeting place for high-ranking officials. It is quite possible that the FSB, or most likely the armed forces of the Russian Federation, we never saw any objective monitoring, so-called, from the Russian side with the dead and wounded civilians. And that's the first thing the Russian Federation would have done if it had really happened that way.
The Russians kept silent about the fact that there were very important guests at the sanatorium at the time of the attack. Exactly who they were is not specified. A notice was posted on the sanatorium's social media page stating that on September 21st, the Foros Hall restaurant would be closed for special service. All the news reports are in the school nearby.
The assembly hall of the school suffered the most damage. Here, part of the ceiling has collapsed. Just look at what's left of one of the walls. From the damage, it's clear that the drone flew in through this window. Now there are fragments scattered everywhere here.
Russia tried, through information manipulation, to cover up their latest terrorist attacks on our country by focusing on this school, which was closed on the weekend and had no students present. This is what the Russians always do. But again, it's not about hitting the school building itself, but rather about the boarding house with the same name, Terletsky, which is located across from the school.
Nearby is also government dacha number 11, the Zarya facility. There's a helipad here, so the FSO is always present and can be called in to secure meetings.
We are demonstrating that today, the defense forces can reach the occupiers anywhere in our Crimea with various means of firepower. Anywhere at all. In the north, in the south, in the west, in the east. And today there is not a single facility that cannot be struck by the defense forces on the territory of Crimea. Once again, Russian air defense has proven its ineffectiveness. They are unable to protect either Russia or the temporarily occupied territories. The air defense system in Crimea is being destroyed. And this is the path to the demilitarization of Crimea and, most importantly, to deoccupation. We are on the right track.
The Russians' aircraft fleet on the occupied peninsula has been reduced. As a result of the successful combat operation by the Ukrainian GUR Special Unit Prize Rack, Ghosts, 3 enemy Mi-8 multi-purpose helicopters, and an expensive Russian Nebo-U radar station were hit.
4 helicopters have been destroyed. In just a few days, 2 unique amphibious aircraft, the B-12 Chaika, have been destroyed. There are actually very few of them in the Black Sea Fleet. If I'm not mistaken, there are 6, and now 2 of them have already been destroyed.
The intelligence officers showed footage of the operation and a video of the wreckage of one of the destroyed helicopters. Occupied Crimea has become a symbol of the fuel collapse. It was here that large amounts of fuel were brought in to refuel Russian military equipment. As a result, there is now a shortage and record-high fuel prices on the peninsula. The rise in gasoline prices is linked to Ukraine's strikes on Russian oil refineries. The video shows Sevastopol. In Yalta, gasoline was delivered to one of the gas stations. The line of people wanting to refuel is simply enormous. Neither the Russian authorities nor the occupation authorities in Crimea acknowledge the problem. They insist that it's merely a matter of logistics. Facts of human rights violations in Crimea are regularly documented and submitted to the UN Human Rights Council and the OSCE. The Russian occupation administration is forcibly conscripting Crimeans into the ranks of the Russian armed forces. Refusal to serve is punishable by criminal prosecution. In addition, there is ongoing militarization of children. Crimea is waiting to return, and Ukraine is not giving Russia the opportunity to normalize the situation.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
And now we move to the Kramatorsk and Toretsk directions of the front. Putin's army is up to its usual tricks here as well. In the Kramatorsk direction, the occupiers attacked 4 times in the areas of Chasiv-Yar, Orikovo-Vasilivka, and towards Stupochki. In the Toretsk direction, the aggressors carried out 10 attacks near Oleksandr Shultin, Sherbinivka, Pleshchivka, and Yablonivka. And here is some more very telling news. Russian fighter jets are already near Alaska. US aviation is taking off to intercept Russian aircraft. This is being reported by the Western press. And in the UK, a powerful explosion occurred at the site of the country's largest drone factory under construction. It's not hard to guess who is behind this attack. At the same time, the south of Russia itself is once again under the sights of the Ukrainian armed forces. The attack by Ukrainian naval drones and UAVs on Russia's Black Sea ports continues. The port of Tuapse joined the list of Russian ports targeted. We'll cover all the details in our report and then return to the studio. It's getting very hot in Crimea again. 2 enemy Antonov 26 aircraft and coastal radar systems were destroyed by Ukrainian GUR fighters on the temporarily occupied peninsula. The occupiers are also uneasy in Tuapse. The local port is under fire. There was a hit on the oil terminal. Local authorities also report that unmanned boats have been discovered in the waters of the Black Sea in the Tuapse district. Residents and visitors were asked to leave the shoreline, but these requests were unsuccessful. And in the video, you can see people actively filming the explosions. And furthermore, the Russian Federation continues to wreak havoc across the entire European continent. In the United Kingdom, a powerful explosion occurred at the construction site of the country's largest drone factory. Due to the incident in Swindon, hundreds of people were evacuated from the affected area,
The final answer should come from the British law enforcement agencies, but it should be noted that the Russian connection will apparently be a priority in the course of the investigation. In recent months, there has been a sharp increase in the activity of Russian special services on European territory, specifically in carrying out acts of sabotage and subversion at defense industry enterprises and in the logistics sector. In addition, in recent weeks, the Russian Federation has been demonstrating a so-called raising the stakes tactic, that is, artificially escalating tensions with the NATO bloc. This includes both incidents of airspace violations and, accordingly, the potential for carrying out strikes against key NATO logistics hubs located in European countries.
Meanwhile, US President Trump was informed about Ukraine's plans to launch an offensive, for which they would need American intelligence data, according to sources cited by the Wall Street Journal. The publication writes that Trump was allegedly briefed on the current situation on the battlefield, emphasizing that Russia has achieved only minor gains in recent years.
In the Novopavlivka and Pokrovsk directions, the situation was brought under control. The situation was stabilized, and there has been no further advance of Russian occupation forces into Ukrainian territory. It was precisely this information that was conveyed to the President of the United States regarding the change in the nature of hostilities in Ukraine at one of the most problematic sections of the front.
Moreover, Russian forces continue their exhausting attacks in the Pokrovsk direction and are preparing for assaults in the Kherson area, according to the Institute for the Study of War.
At the moment, the most problematic sections of the front are the Zaporizhia and, accordingly, the Donetsk fronts. In the Donetsk region, this refers to the Konstantinivka direction, where, unfortunately, the occupiers have achieved a number of tactical successes, as well as the Lyman direction. In the Lyman direction, it is precisely Russian troops who are attacking, contrary to the information from the so-called Institute for the Study of War about the successes of Ukraine's defense forces. The information about the Lyman direction does not correspond to reality. At the moment, the occupiers are trying to advance in the direction of Seversk and Yampol. If the occupiers manage to capture the settlement of Yampol, it will allow them to attack simultaneously in both the Lyman and, accordingly, the Seversk directions.
Russian authorities are planning to toughen the punishment for desertion for convicts who chose to go fight against Ukraine instead of serving their sentences. In this way, the authorities want to put pressure on prisoners who, under the pretext of fighting, were released and then flee the battlefield at the first opportunity. And now, an analysis of the situation on the Novopavlivka and Tuapse fronts. The Russian world continues here as well to destroy, kill, and maim. On the Novopavlivka front, the enemy carried out 13 attacks near the settlements of Voskresenka, Yanvarske, Vorone, Ternove, and Novohrihorivka. On the Tuapse front, our defenders repelled 4 attempts by enemy units to advance in the area of Olhivske. They are the first to meet the enemy in the sky. They hunt Russian drones, missiles, and even aircraft. The air defense of the 3rd Assault Brigade is breaking records for destroying aerial targets. In August alone, they intercepted and destroyed 1,500 enemy drones. What exactly do they use to take down enemy hardware? And why is there a growing need for more and more interceptor drones? Our brave defenders told the TSN correspondent Daria Nazarova about this important matter.
The experts often take down enemy drones in the sky with a single shot.
485 aerial targets were destroyed in a month. These shootdowns were verified and confirmed.
The anti-aircraft missile unit of the 3rd Assault Brigade used to cover the infantry. Now it protects cities and villages.
This is a short-range man-portable air defense system. It uses a laser guidance system, not thermal. We no longer need the target to be hot or emit a lot of heat. The main thing for us is to spot it in the sky.
The RBS-70 is a missile system with a laser guidance system. It can reach targets at an altitude of 5 kilometers and can easily take down an enemy Shahed drone. Moreover, it can even shoot down an enemy aircraft.
Helicopters and planes like Sukhois no longer fly here because they're afraid of manpads and air defense systems. And now FPV drones have appeared. There's a huge drone war going on.
Often, along with Shaheds, the Russians launch decoys, gerans. That's why defenders need to stay vigilant.
While you're keeping watch and shooting down one, another might be sneaking up behind you. That's why there's a constant 360-degree rotation.
the shooter from Vershina, has been at war since the very first days. He started as a grenadier, then became an anti-aircraft gunner. He says he's worked with all kinds of weapons. He worked with the Soviet Igla and the American Stinger.
The first shoot down. Your hands shake, your knees buckle. It's scary, but you're still satisfied. The first thing I shot down was a Lancet, but it wasn't with the Igla, it was with a regular rifle near Kherson.
I was in the infantry. Now he destroys Russian drone Varyags. At 24, he's already a squad commander. Although, he says, he never thought he'd end up in the army.
I dodged the draft. I didn't want to go. I left the country about 2 or 3 weeks before the war started. And then the full-scale war began, and I came back.
At the moment, the fighters are hunting for Shaheds. However, Varyag admits he has another target.
A helicopter. But that's the biggest prize. A Shahed is one thing, but if it's a chopper or something like that, that's even bigger.
Besides manpads, the guys have a whole arsenal of weapons. Everything needed to destroy as many Russian aerial targets as possible.
We're putting a lot of effort into development and scaling up. These are interceptor UAVs, our anti-aircraft drones that are capable of countering both small drones and larger Shaheds, and their range of applications is quite broad.
As soon as night falls, another crew releases interceptor drones for the hunt.
It's faster than a Shahed. That's if we're talking about speed. And also, as you can see, it's made of foam plastic. It might seem like it's not super reliable, but in reality that makes it lightweight and very easy to repair if anything happens.
This beauty can stay in the air for about 40 minutes and carries 500 grams of explosives. That's enough to blow up a Shahed. The plane is launched from a catapult. A moment in the air and the interceptor drone finds its enemy target. The drone is operated by Yusul, who is a graphic designer in civilian life. He has more than 30 Shaheds shot down to his name. He says that the Russians occasionally upgrade their drones, so it's getting harder and harder to shoot them down.
They usually either fly very fast or maneuver very sharply.
The defenders of the sky are destroying enemy drones in the Kharkiv region. It is through this air corridor that the occupiers launch Shaheds across the country. That's why the air defense forces are under enormous strain.
If there's a large combined attack, there could be up to 1,000 Shaheds.
The fighters are also equipped with another drone interceptor of the copter type.
It's basically like a loitering munition for interception. Super fast, designed to hit high-speed targets. We operate on the front line. The first line of air defense, meaning we are the first to encounter all aerial targets, in this case Shaheds.
Since May alone, the unit has destroyed more than 2,000 aerial targets. Of those, more than 100 were Shaheds. But they assure us this is only the beginning. The main thing is to have something to counter the drones with.
And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Kupiansk front, where the enemy is also becoming more aggressive. Yesterday, there were 6 attacks by the invaders on the Kupiansk direction. Our defenders repelled enemy assault actions near Kotlyarivka, Lozova, and towards Pishchanove and Kolesnikivka. Ukrainian sappers are true heroes of this war. How has their work changed as of the fall of 2025? What has changed for our defenders with the appearance of ground drones? And what war crimes does the unscrupulous and treacherous enemy commit time and again? This is exactly what the next report by TSN correspondent Ruslan Yermolyuk is about. Normal people. That's how it is. For normal people, the morning starts with coffee, but for a sapper, it starts with some unknown military stuff he's seeing for the first time.
An enemy drone carrying unknown explosives flew into the trench but did not explode.
Them. Fables for you. The pedals are the same ones that they throw onto logistics routes, that is, onto paths. They also convert anti-tank mines for remote release. That is, under the existing data, a magnetic sensor is installed in exactly the same way. So when the magnetic field changes, it triggers an explosion. And they're waiters too. They also like to use those.
Because of the large number of enemy drones, our sappers have switched to remote mining from the air and with ground drones.
We mine every day. We make as many mines as possible so that the area around us is impassable. The last time this vehicle went out, it was hit by 2 drops. It came back with a few holes, but it made it back on its own.
Furik, the youngest in the sapper unit, joined after his mandatory service. Now he operates a drone and delivers supplies to the guys along the logistics route so they can survive.
And it's often tough because sometimes it just won't go. Sometimes you end up carrying it yourself, dragging the drone along, 2 in 1. The weather doesn't always cooperate. You get used to fear, you get used to everything.
Ground drones have become logisticians. Covering long distances in bad weather or heat with baggage is now almost impossible for infantrymen because enemy drones are also hunting them from the sky.
On one of our runs, we delivered 200 kilograms of supplies alone. That means water, food, and everything else. Plus, there were also some munitions. So we deliver everything to the position, and roughly speaking, people at the position can forget about everything else for a week.
A human life is worth more than metal, say the sappers. That's why they're looking for funds to buy more of these machines. After all, in a short time, these ground drones have managed to save the lives of wounded soldiers without putting evacuation teams at risk.
During all the time we've been using them, which actually hasn't been that long, we've evacuated 20 people from the battlefield. That's just the wounded, and probably more than 25 were killed.
The enemy is actively hunting our ground robotic systems. It's a high-value target, and destroying it disrupts our logistics.
Now they have a new tactic. If before they would track where you are going and just strike along the road, now they wait until you reach the position, and only then do they start targeting it.
Ground drones like ants are constantly moving along the front line. A lot now depends on them, and most importantly, they save the lives of infantry who have been sitting in the trenches on the front line for months. After all, getting in and out of a position is the hardest and most dangerous part.
Of course, it's the 4th year of the war and everyone is very tired, especially the guys who are sitting in the trenches. Some of them don't leave for 3 months at a time. They go in there healthy but come out thin, exhausted, and drained of all strength. That's exactly why these drones are needed, so at least they don't have to deny themselves food.
The guys repair them themselves. They get them back in working order after a combat mission and send them out to the front again without any rest. Because they know the infantry needs ammo and food.
That's all for today. But very soon on Front News, there will be new unique reports from our journalists, brought from the hottest spots of the war so that you know the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.